Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Alright, so for a long time now, obviously, of anyone that's watched the podcast for a while, all of SciTech Culture has been filmed off of iPhones, at least for my feed anyway, and it's been useful. I think, making that transition over to iPhones has been great, but, obviously the current one that's currently in the stable is my primary phone, which is the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, I only raised this because there's a bit of a bugbear of mine that there's been this online commentary that the 14 series in particular has had worse battery life overall than previous models, and especially compared to the 13 series. And I have not experienced this at all. Now, this might be luck, maybe I just got a great battery in my phone and all these other people didn't. I suspect it's got something more to do with usage and methods of charging more than anything else. For context, we're 18 months into the 14 series life cycle, so 18 months is a decent amount of time. You'd expect some of the battery health to drop by this point. Mine's at 98% as of today. All the online commentary I was seeing were people getting annoyed that after 7 or 8 months it was already down to 90%. As a general rule, obviously the Apple kind of says at 80% that's probably when you should either swap out the battery or get a new phone. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. I don't use my phone on average more than 2 hours a day at most. I've had a look at my screen time, and I also don't charge it overnight. I don't have it by my bedside on a wireless charging stand. I do no wireless charging whatsoever, which I suspect might be part of the cause because it generates more heat. Or like I said, I might have just gotten lucky, but I was kind of wanting to just state, hey, not all of us had bad issues with this.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I guess, angle, and I certainly think that you're onto something. The fact that your usage is different. I think the people that tend to complain loudest about this tend to use their phones 23 hours a day.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I still boggles my mind how anyone can do more than that. The most I've ever been able to do is actually when I'm on holidays somewhere in some other location and I'm snapping more photos than normal. I'm using Google Maps more often. I'm using, search more often to find things. That's when but even then, if I get up to 5 hours, that might be, the maximum. But yeah, it's curious.
There's plenty of people I see wandering around the city who have all those features on 24/7, like videoing where they're going via Google Maps,
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Absolutely. We'll stick with Apple for just a little bit longer, only because the big story this week from them, although I guess they didn't really publicly announce it in a big way or anything, because it was never really ever announced, was the Apple cars being cancelled. I was really looking forward to a self-driving Apple car at 100K, Steve, but I think they just kind of realized that, it just wasn't going to be a thing. What I thought was interesting, though, is that their value proposition for coming to market with it was that it would be a fully autonomous self-driving vehicle, and that would be the differentiator why you're buying it at 100K plus with 1 terabyte of storage or something, as opposed to buying a Tesla or buying another electric car. Otherwise, it would just be another Tesla. And what makes it different?
Yeah, look, this is interesting. I think, it's one of those things. When Apple launched into this, everyone really thought we were going to have totally autonomous vehicles within 10 years. So they probably, made a decision back then to do a 10-year plan. But we know Apple, so sure, they haven't come up with a car, but I bet you they exactly know where all the Apple interfaces are in an autonomous car of tomorrow. So they're probably now able to go on and design the products that will interface with, the Tesla automated car or whoever else, comes to market with that driverless car. So yeah, I guess the reality is at the end of the day, they probably don't need to be a car manufacturer, but they will need very much to be a part of the cars of the future.
The other thing, obviously, was that all of those car engineers have moved over to their AI division, because who would think that's important right now?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's really just now probably 10 years of AI projects.
Absolutely. Okay, it's a leap year this year. If you hadn't noticed, we just passed the 29th of February. It's always a curious little oddity. And I guess the question would be, why does that come about? Why do we have them, etc.? Obviously, it's because we don't do an exact full rotation that's nice and neat to be calculated around the sun once a year. We essentially, have a bit of a quarter of a day every year, roughly speaking. Although obviously this article that we got off the conversation here was explaining how it goes right down to the minutes, just to in various detail. But obviously that once you get to a full day after 4 years, that's where the extra day comes from. What was curious, obviously, I thought, was just the idea of what would happen if we didn't do this. And obviously the clear thing with that is that seasons would start to appear at times of the year that probably shouldn't be, and we would start losing track of what was going on when, and it would just be harder to manage overall.
Well, that's right. You can imagine that over 30 years, without leap years, you'd shift effectively a number of days, and over time it wouldn't be long before all your seasons were out of whack. And if you didn't have the internet, how would you know when it was springtime to start planting?
Absolutely. And and just to talk about that exact figure, it's not exactly 365.25 days. It's actually 365.24219 days, which introduces a further complication, which apparently Pope Gregory the 13th, at least he signed off on an order to make that adjustment, hence the Gregorian calendar. And that would be to still be a leap year every 4 years, except in century years divisible by 100, like 1700 or 2100, unless they are also divisible by 400. We don't have them on those days to get the cycle back into shape. I do like the amount of effort that was put into that, I must say.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you noted that he signed off, because I doubt he calculated it himself.
Absolutely.
But you never know.
Well, you'd certainly be a hell of a pope. Let's put it that way. Alrighty. So I just wanted to spend the rest of this episode actually being a bit more upbeat around popular culture for a change. I know that we've spent a few episodes, rightly, I think, sort of questioning where pop culture is going, movies, music, TV, etc., and this concept that a lot of content is just being recycled. It's not new, it's not fresh, but there are some odd gems here and there that pop up from time to time. For me, I'm going to focus on two current TV shows and two films that one's out now and another one's coming out later. Shogun, which is on Disney Plus, although under their Star brand, obviously, because I don't think it's a very Disney-esque kind of show, is really spectacular. I'd obviously have to see the rest of the show. It's not all out yet, but it all looks like a really lavish production, and they put a lot of effort in. And one thing that I really did appreciate is that they actually had the Japanese speaking in Japanese rather than doing the American Hollywood cheat of having them speak English. And although there's a bit of a cheat in there where the English-speaking people are actually supposed to be speaking Portuguese, but I guess for the benefit of the audience, they're speaking English. But apart from that, it's actually quite spectacular in terms of its production, and kind of highlights every now and then you can get excited by these things. And similarly, there's another show that's on Netflix called House of Ninjas, which is probably a bit smaller scale, but still really well done. It's a mystery thriller. There's a threat, there's a crime, and you go to your ninja family to go sort it out for you. Lots of ninja action in there. And it's got some of that sort of quirky Japanese humor in there as well. I actually quite liked it a lot. And I don't think Netflix is actually promoting it as much as what they probably could, although it seems to be catching on in around the place as well. So it's just sort of to highlight that, you know, it's good that these shows are out.
Yeah, it's great. You know, this sort of productivity sort of or creativity is still has a niche, and I think we've noted anyway over the years that probably on the streaming services, when they produce their own content, you know, they follow, I guess, the original HBO path where, you know, they allow storylines to be creative and to grow in specific ways. And I almost wonder if there's some reason that Netflix aren't overly promoting. Maybe there's something they know about, you know, the best way to get the biggest audiences is not to promote and let word of mouth if they've got a good show. I think that's a great strategy too. So it's interesting, isn't it? But it's also awesome to see, you know, shows like this making their way, you know, and being there for people to view.
And it's an interesting point, especially with Netflix, because they've had successes before with what you would call foreign language content. Squid Game being the obvious example that sort of took over the discussion and the discourse for a while it was out. So it's a way to actually access a lot more newer content as well. So if you don't feel like you want to be inundated with the Hollywood product, even though Shogun is a Hollywood product, you know, at least you've got some other alternatives.
Oh, I think you're right, and it is an interesting point, because I think you know, in the past, particularly in the US, they would have been very nervous about showing, you know, foreign content, you know, because that's, you know, from an Australian perspective, that's for SBS to do. But the beauty of a on-demand service is that you choose when you watch it, you choose what you want to watch, and if the quality is there, you invest the time to watch it and understand it, or really get into it. I mean, I think that's really what on demand has given us, probably more so than what we used to see on normal linear TV, is that it gives people an opportunity to invest a little bit more. You can binge, but not just binge, you can also watch, and I think watch more deeply, because you can pause, you can think about things, you can watch them twice to see, you know, did I really see that, or have I got it right? So the investment is there, so you can put a lot more complicated content in, and perhaps that's what they're starting to understand now. You know, you don't need to go to a generic format anymore. You can be a lot more novel with your content, as long as your content appeals to an audience.
Oh, and just in case anyone's thinking, because I've bashed remakes and recycled content before, Shogun is obviously not the first time it's been adapted. It's a very famous book, obviously. There was a mini-series in 1980 that was a big thing at the time, but in this particular case, I think rather than, say, you know, remaking Star Wars: A New Hope into, you know, the same film 30 years later with The Force Awakens, in this particular case, they're two different things, and they're done at completely different scales. And I actually think that's when a remake makes sense, because you've got a whole new fresh take on the material.
Oh, absolutely. And if you think in the probably 40 years since the original Shogun, you know, well, we all know how much better content is today, you know, visually, and, you know, well, in every respect.
Absolutely. I did also want to touch on Dune Part 2 and the Deadpool and Wolverine trailers. I haven't seen, obviously Deadpool's not out yet. Dune 2 has just come out. I haven't seen either one of those. I'm going to hazard a guess that, because I really loved Part 1, that Part 2 of Dune is going to be pretty good, and by all accounts it is. Sadly, it's still not going to drag me out to the cinema to watch it, but a bit like Oppenheimer, I was like, thinking about it, but I'll probably still won't do it. But having said that, a lot of the commentary that's coming out about Dune in particular is that it's like the reason why people would be into movies in the first place. It's like a reminder of what, I guess, the pinnacle of what Hollywood can do at its best, and that's something, you know, that's something to be encouraged and to celebrate, I think.
Oh, I totally agree. And look, from a personal perspective, I went and saw Poor Things last year. At least I think it was last year now. And in Australia, that was almost, I don't know, it was like an art film compared to how Barbie was marketed. Poor Things in Australia barely had any profile at all. I went and saw it and thought I was seeing something that was, you know, like a well-kept secret. And then I saw how many Oscar nominations it got. So, you know, from that perspective, I was heartened that something a little bit different could certainly get recognition that it did. And I think that's pretty much what we're commenting on today is just that I think maybe we're just seeing a glimpse of, you know, opportunities for unique, novel, and slightly different content and slightly different ideas sort of are finding audiences. And so maybe it's a mini renaissance for film.
Absolutely. And just quickly, I did want to touch on the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer only because I got a nice chuckle out of it. I've enjoyed the previous films, and the thing that I find interesting is that, you know, we've had a bit of a dig about Marvel in recent years in the past, but it seems clear that, you know, they've got the potential there to, you know, to upset the apple cart in terms of kicking it all over and maybe starting it again, because there's a lot of fourth wall breaking in that trailer, and just having Ryan Reynolds with his peculiar sense of humor calling himself Marvel Jesus and he's going to change the whole cinematic universe was just refreshing to see.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen the trailer, but I'm going to have a look at it right now. That breaking the fourth wall, it used to be a no-no, I guess, or you had to do it in a particular way, but it sounds like it's being used at least to comic effect for you.
Oh, absolutely. And look, for lots of people, I think, because even if like ardent Marvel fans, I'm pretty sure, haven't been terribly enthused with how the last couple of years have gone, just in terms of the product that's been produced. So, you know, this film's coming out in July. Maybe it can re-energize things for them.
Oh, let's hope.
Absolutely.
The last few haven't been that good.
Exactly. Alrighty, we might wrap it up there. I'm gonna, you know, double check my 14 Pro Max battery again, and you know, just make sure that it's not going to die on me. As a cycle, I'm right on that cycle where I'm going to use the phone for like a 3-year period as the primary phone, but I still want it to work for another 3 years after that as a secondary camera. So I want that battery working.
Well, if anyone can do it, you can, and keep us up to date over the next 5 years.
The long-term project, absolutely. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.